Shalom, and welcome to V'ahavta Yisrael, a Hebrew phrase which means you shall love Israel. We hope you'll stay with us for the next 30 minutes as our teacher, Dr. Baruch, shares his expository teaching from the Bible. Dr. Baruch is the senior lecturer at the Zera Avraham Institute based in Israel. Although all courses are taught in Hebrew at the Institute, Dr. Baruch is pleased to share this weekly address in English. To find out more about our work in Israel, please visit us on the web at LoveIsrael.org. That's one word, LoveIsrael.org. Now, here's Baruch with today's lesson.
It is very important that we apply properly to the biblical text the laws of hermeneutics, how to properly exegete a biblical passage so that we arrive at the proper understanding, and not just that we understand this, but we also apply that to our life, that we might grow, mature spiritually, and be a greater influence on other people. That they might see the power of God being released through us in obedient living, in living that brings honor to God, that is a blessing to other people, so that they have before them an example of godliness, and that they might learn the source of that godliness is faith in Messiah Yeshua. When we apply that faith to the Word of God, things drastically change. Well, take out your Bible and look with me to the book of Genesis in chapter 22. We left off last week with verse 20. So the book of Genesis, chapter 22, and we'll begin with verse 20. What we're seeing here is a genealogy. And as I've said to you in other studies within the book of Genesis, that these genealogies, more often than not, have a greater purpose than just telling us who begat who or who gave birth to who. That information can be significant. It can contain revelation for a variety of purposes, but many times genealogies have an additional purpose that has high theological implications. And this is a good example of one such genealogy. So, verse 20, and it came about after these things that it was told to Abraham, saying, the first thing that we can derive here is that this genealogy is related to Avraham. And therefore, it's going to give us information about the call of God on Abraham's life. And this is vital that we see this. So, once more, it was told to Avraham, saying, behold, Milcah has given birth also she sons to Nahor, your brother. So this is within Avraham's family, not him directly, but Nahor. And who did Milcah give birth to? Well, we see here, she gave birth to Uts, who is his firstborn, and Butz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram. So here, in this first section of the genealogy, it's related to Avraham, but it's not touching him directly. We see that there's an offshoot, we might say, by the term Aram. And we're speaking about a different people. Now, let's move on to the next verse, verse 22. Also, that was born to Milcah, we see here, Kesed and Chazu, Pildash, and Yitlaf, and Betuel. So we see additional individuals within that family. But now there's a different direction, a different offshoot, because now we're focusing on Betuel. And this individual, very unique, because it says here that he gives birth to Rivka. And Rivka, we know, is going to be tied back together to Avraham in a unique way. We're going to learn in the weeks to come, and you already know this, we haven't seen it in the text, but we will. We're going to see that Yitzchak, that son of Avraham that we've already discussed, Well, Rivka is going to become his wife. And therefore we see that sharsheret, that chain from Avraham to Sarah to Yitzchak, and in a few weeks we'll see Rebekah is going to be brought into this covenant family. And notice what else it says about this. Lo and behold, a number is mentioned. And numbers, more often than not, have significance, especially this number. It speaks about these 8 were born that bore Milcah to Nahor. So she bore 8, these 8 to Nahor. And why do I say 8 is such an important number? Well, I hope you know the answer to this by now. 8 is related to newness. 8 is related to kingdom. 8 is related to redemption. All these things. So what is happening? We know, if we've read this book, that Rivka, as I said, is going to come into this chosen family, into that covenantal agreement to bring blessing. And that blessing is going to come about by means of redemption. And that's what the number 8 tells us. So when we look at this, look once more. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, the brother of Avraham. And we also see that he had a concubine, and her name was Reumah. And she gave birth also she to Tevach and Gaham and Tachash and finally Maacah. Now, if we look here, we find that she gave birth to who? We find that she gave birth to Tevach, to Gaham, Tachash, and finally Maacah. 4 individuals. Now, even though the number 4 doesn't appear numerically like the number 8, it is to cause us, if we count these first 8, we should count the second 4. And 4 is a number that has global implications. It's a global world number. So what can we derive? What this passage is telling us is that Avraham, he has this call upon his life to bring change, to bring newness, to bring a kingdom implication. And all of this is going to come about by means of redemption. And this redemption, well, remember the number 4. It is a worldly redemption. That is, God wants to bring redemption. Another way we can understand that is that God wants to bring repair to the world. And we see, for example, in the book of Romans, it tells us that this world groans, cries out, yearns for redemption. So Abraham's covenant, it has worldwide implications, not just to one group of people, one nationality, one ethnic group, one nation. No, it has worldwide implications. And it's going to continue. How so? Well, now let's look at chapter 23. We have seen that Rivka has already been introduced to the text. And that's important because, well, if you're following along in a Hebrew Bible or one that it may be in English or some other language breaks up the weekly Torah portion, we're entering into a new Torah portion called Chaye Sarah. Chaye Sarah, that is the life of Sarah. What's unique is that she's going to die early on in this passage. And who's going to be the matriarch that replaces her? Well, we've already been told. In the previous chapter, the chapter we just concluded, chapter 22, the text emphasizes Rivka, who will become, we'll see it in a few weeks, Ishto Shel Yitzchak, the wife of Isaac. So God is providing the solution before the problem has been revealed. What's the problem? Sarah's dead. What's the solution? Rivka. So let's now move into chapter 23. It came about the life of Sarah. So the life of Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. So the years or the life of Sarah was 127 years. Here again, this is another important number. We find 127. And one of the way that we look at this is 12 times 10. And what's the significance of 12? 12 is the people of God. And 10 offers into the text completion, that in its entirety. And 7, well, that's sanctification, that's holiness, and that best understood in a practical sense as purpose. So we could look at this as 120 plus 7, or the number 12 and 7. 10, it just brings completion or entirety or wholeness into the interpretation. So God's entire people are going to be sanctified. There's a purpose for the people of God. And here the people of God represents the descendants of Avraham, the seed of Avraham. And notice what is going to be taught to us in this passage. Look again at chapter 23 and verse 1. The life of Sarah were 127 years. Thus were the life of Sarah. Verse 2. And Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, or the land of Canaan. Now, also introduced to this passage is that very important place, first known as Kiryat Arba. And notice the number 4 appears. Now, earlier on at the end of chapter 22, we counted those 4 descendants, and we came away with the number 4. If we miss that, we find that this same idea is being spelled out by the city Kiryat Arba. Now, why do I say 4? Because Kiryat is city, and the number or the word Arba in Hebrew is 4. So it's the city of 4. Now, which city are we talking about? We're talking about Hebron. And what does the name Hebron speak to? Well, we talked about this in the previous parasha, Parashat Vayera, when Avraham was in Kiryat Arba in the plains of Mamre, which it says is Hebron. And Hebron means to join together, to bring unity. And that's what redemption does. It brings unity between us and God. And if we're unified with God, we're going to also be together with one another, having Pdut, unity between us. So all of this happened in this place, Hebron. Sarah died, and we need to see that this city is uniquely connected to the promises of God. Well, keep reading in the second half of verse 2. And Avraham came, or we could say went, and what did he do? He mourned. Now this word, lispod, usually has to do with, in modern Hebrew, it's eulogizing. We hear in eulogizing in English, and we think about someone who says good things about the dead. And perhaps that is something that he did, but it's related to mourning, what it's in Hebrew we call evel. But finally we find that he also wept for her. But notice, if you have a traditional Hebrew text, you're going to find that word for weeping, it's spelled uniquely. Now, not by the letters, meaning how it's spelled, but the nature of one letter. When we look for this word weeping, we find the word lamed, veit, kaf, tav, hey. Now, there's nothing out of ordinary about these letters. That's what you would expect. But the middle letter, the kaf, is written in the Hebrew text very small. Now, do we know why that is? We do not. But there's an oral interpretation. That doesn't mean that it's right. We don't find it in the scripture. But the message of the sages is the kaf is written very tiny to speak about Avraham mourning in a private way, weeping, not publicly, but privately. Outwardly, the interpretation is that he came confidently. Why? He had faith in the resurrection, and he wanted to demonstrate that. But in the natural man, emotionally, he was grieved by Sarah's death. But publicly, he wanted to testify that death is not a sad thing, because death is necessary for resurrection. So there's a hope here that he's sharing publicly according to the sage interpretation. Look now to verse 3. And Avraham got up from his face, and from his dead, from before the dead, so he was weeping before Sarah. She had passed away. He was grieved over that, but now he got up, and it says that he spoke to the sons of Chet, saying, a sojourner and resident am I with you. Two words. Now, the first word is ger. Now, if you were just to ask a Orthodox rabbi, what is a ger? And he would say a ger is a Gentile that converted to Judaism. And we certainly cannot make that as a legitimate interpretation here. No, biblically, the word ger speaks to someone who comes and who dwells in a land. The word ger comes from the Hebrew word gar, which means he dwelt or he resided. Now, the word toshav comes from the word to set or dwell, and it speaks about being a resident. And what he's saying here is this. He uses two words to speak about his commitment to that land. He's a stranger. He is not one of them. He's living among them. But he's saying, I'm here to stay, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not leaving. And he's making that public. And therefore he speaks saying who he is, this sojourner or resident and dweller among them. And he says, give to me an estate, literally is how we would state this, a estate for bearing with you. This is the second time this word appears, bearing with you, that I might bury my dead before you. So Avraham, because he's burying Sarah in this location, and he's made this statement, Ger ve'toshav anochi, he says, I'm here to stay, and therefore I want to bury Sarah in this location with you. Now, all of this is to underscore the fact that God has given to him this land. It's his land, but notice what he's going to do with it. Look now to the next verse. Look with me to verse 5. And the sons of Chet, they answered Avraham, saying to him, verse 6, we have heard, my Lord, that Prince of God. So he says, we've heard you, and we recognize that you are a prince of God. Now think about that. Why are they under the impression that he's a prince from God, an elevated one with God, that he has a connection with the true God? Well, because how he has lived. He has lived prophetically. Remember what we spoke of in chapter 20. It reveals that Avraham is a prophet of God. And what he did based upon God's instructions to him. And because of that, there was a testimony. He lived godly. He lived under this divine call. That was unique. That wasn't how others were living. And these individuals, they recognized it and spoke to it here, that you, literally Adoni, my Lord, and it means it's a term of respect in this context. A prince of God are you among us. And then they go on in verse 6, with the choices, meaning the choice, the most choice of our burial plots, bury your dead. A man from among us, his tomb, he will not, basically, he's unable to refuse from you burying your dead. So there's a statement collectively from the sons of Chet. They recognize God in his life, that he is on assignment. And they said, there's not one from among us that's able, that would refrain from giving to you his burial place. Now, this is significant. Because burying the dead in that culture I'm speaking about, not Avraham's, but the pagan one, the sons of Chet. You see today that many people will spend, if they can, if they're wealthy, they will invest lots of money in a plot of land, in a tombstone, in order to show how great they were in this age, because probably they don't have much faith in the age to come. Everything's tied up to this age, so they want some beautiful location, some prestigious place, and then they make a large and ornate and one that stands out, a tombstone, or a place that recognizes, that shows others who they were and who's buried in this place. You've all been to a cemetery and seen some large structure, and what do you say? I wonder who's buried there. That must be someone important. That must be someone great. Well, that was the mindset, certainly at that time as well. And for them to say, not one from among us will withhold our burial place. See, sometimes people, not among the Jewish culture, but among others, they would oftentimes spend great sum of money and great amount of time in order to prepare their own place for burial or their family burial plot. But what do we have here? Maybe one was doing that, but they would not withhold it from Avraham. Why? Because they recognize his connection to God. So let me ask you a question. Are you recognized as having a connection with God by other people? Avraham was. So, verse 7. And Avraham got up and he bowed to the people of the land, to the sons of Chet. Now, this bowing is not in obviously a context of worship, but out of respect. It's his way of showing his gratitude and his respect for the people on this significant act of generosity, collective generosity of the people of Chet. And notice what takes place here. Look with me to verse 8. And he spoke with them, saying, if it's your desire, literally says, if it's your soul, but in our mindset, it would say, if it's your desire, if you are thus minded for me to bury my dead from before me, listen to me and entreat me to Ephron, the son of Zohar. So he's saying here in this passage, I appreciate that. And if you are really serious about this, helping me put the dead out of my sight, burying Sarah, my wife, then go and entreat Ephron for me. Beseech him that he might have that same mindset, because Avraham wants to buy that burial place. Verse 9, we read verse 9, it says, that he might give to me the cave of Machpelah. Now, the term Machpelah, Marat HaMachpelah, means the cave of the pears. And it's significant because we know that in that location is going to be buried a pair or a couple of people. When I say couple, I mean couples like husband and wife. This place, Marat HaMachpelah, is going to be buried there, Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and also Yaakov and Leah. Rachel, Yaakov's other wife, is buried in Bethlehem. So we're going to have 3 pairs of couples. And why is that significant? Well, it's significant because 6 people are buried there. And now, notice what it's saying. We have the idea of redemption for the world, and that is going to be done by grace. And the key to this is this location. And we're dealing with a burial place. Well, if you come from a biblical background, you're going to think that burial is a necessary step And we always look forward to resurrection. So he's doing this to testify to resurrection. And the resurrection is the outcome of God's grace. So once more, we say, give to me the cave of the pairs, or the doubles, which is to him, meaning to Ephron, which is at the end of his field, for, it says, kesef maleh, we would translate that, full price, that he might give it to me in your midst as a possession for a tomb, for a estate, a burial state, we could translate it. Now, verse 10. And Ephron, he was sitting in the midst of the children of Israel, and Ephron the Hittite answered Avraham in the ears of the sons of Chet, it says, to all which came to the gate of the city, saying. And notice here how the term city is emphasized. It's emphatic in the text. Why is that? Because city gates were for the purpose of decisions, judgment, for decisions and financial transactions. So what do we have here? We're going to see that the text, and this is very important that you see this, the text is going to emphasize Avraham's acquisition of this place of land, this parcel of land in Hebron. And notice something else that it says here. Now we're ready for verse 11. Avraham has petitioned, saying, I want to pay the full price for this land. And notice the response. He says, no, Adoni. Now, that means in modern Hebrew, it's a term like sir, a term of respect. Sir, some would say masters or Lord, but it's not Lord as in the Lord my God, but it's Lord as in England, a title of respect. So he says, no, my Lord, listen to me. The field I will give to you, and the cave which is in it to you. I will give it before the eyes of the sons of my people. I will give it to you as a burial place for your dead. Now, that's very generous, but here's the problem. In that day and age, simply saying that didn't make it official, even though he did so in the ears of the people. Avraham, he wanted it to be more secure. And what did he do? Well, he was blessed by this, but notice what he says. Move now to verse 12. And Avraham, he bowed down before the people of the land. So he's respectful to all of them and doing this before the people, but the context would have us to believe before Ephron. And he spoke to Ephron in the ears of the people of the land, saying, surely you, and it's a term of beseeching. If you'll hear me on this matter, it might say, that I will give to you the price of the field. Take from me, and I will bury my dead there. So he says basically, I am petitioning you that you might hear me. Remember, here's response. We could say that you might obey me in this matter. In regard to the price of the field that I might give to you. And what happens? Well, verse 14. And Ephraim, he answered Avraham, saying to him, verse 15, my Lord, hear me, the land is 400 shekels of kesef. Between me and between you, what is that? So this passage is saying, I've heard you in this matter that you want to pay the full price. The full price is 400 shekels. But between me and you, Ephron was a great man. And Avraham was a great man. What I mean is very influential and very wealthy. And what he's saying here is this: 400 shekels between me and you, it's not all that significant. I was just giving it to you, but if you insist, therefore the price of this land is 400 shekels. Now, this is another time that 4 appears in the passage. We have Kiryat Arba. We have those 4 descendants mentioned in this passage. And over, we find that what's going on here has worldwide implications. So it's 400 shekels that he's saying this land is worth. And notice what's so important about this. He says in this passage that Avraham, verse 16, Avraham, he heard Ephron. And Avraham weighed out to Ephron the kesef, that is the money or the silver, which he had spoken of in the ears of the sons of Chet, 400 shekels of kesef, of silver. So it's being repeated over and over, 400, and he caused it to pass among the merchants. Now, the end of verse 16 is very important. It's important because this makes it a recorded transaction. Not one that we could argue about, did he ever pay, did he not? Or one that, well, it's a gift and it was just to put his loved one there, but not all of it belongs to him. It was just something that he did to help him out, but the land retains its rightful owner, Ephron. All of that is not the case. The text emphasizes, it screams it out, that Avraham paid full price. And second, the price that was asked by Ephron, he paid full price, and the transaction was recorded in an official manner. Now, why do I emphasize that? Because this parcel of land belongs to Avraham. Avraham, later on Yitzchak, later on Yaakov. It is uniquely related, Hebron is uniquely related to the promise of God, that covenant promise of God. And that's why today there's only about 400 Jewish families that lives here. And why do they live there? By the way, they live there under great risk of life. They have to have strong security because they live in Hebron, which has officially approximately between 300,000 and 400,000 Arabs, Palestinians, that are not very happy that there's Jewish people there. And why do those Jewish people remain there? Because they understand the significance of that place. It has spiritual implications for the world. Let me tell you something. If you're wise, you will pray for those Jewish residents of Hebron. They're holding on, they're maintaining the significance and the implications of what we're reading right now. Now, there's something else. We know that David, I'm speaking about King David, when he became king, he began his rule, his administration, his monarchy from Hebron. And that's important because whenever we see David, we should also think of that messianic hope, because the Messiah is the son of David. And he ruled there for 7 years and 6 months. 7, the purpose of God. 6, grace. Only by the grace of God will the purposes of God be achieved. So Hebron was kind of foundational for moving the kingdom after 7 years and 6 months to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a kingdom word. It has kingdom implications. When we hear Jerusalem, we should think about the kingdom. That holy city, the place that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, is going to rule from for 1,000 years. And then ultimately that last stage of the kingdom is called the New Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is a kingdom word. So if we want into the kingdom, if we want that kingdom to be established, understand that Hebron is significant. It's not by accident that David ruled there first before going. Hebron, what does it mean? Unity. And there's got to be unity. Unity in a proper understanding of Abraham's covenant. And that covenant is seen, it is announced by the patriarchs. And Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of the pears, well, it is rooted in the patriarchs that promised that covenant relationship. You do not put significance on Hebron. You do not put the proper significance on Abraham's covenant. And Abraham's covenant, Paul says, Galatians 3:16, the foundation of it is Messiah and the promise of forgiveness, of redemption, of kingdom that Messiah and only Messiah brings. So all of this passage has great, great importance to us. So he says, what is this between me and you? Avraham rises up. He says, I want to pay the full price. And he causes those 400 shekels to pass through the merchants. So it would be recorded, deeded as Avraham for his family. Not borrowing it, not using it, not taking a portion of it, and it retains its original ownership. No, it changes. And we could say that Avraham redeemed that. And that redemption has worldwide implications. Look now to verse 17. Literally it says, and established. Literally means it got up. But what it means here is that this transaction was established. And the field of Ephron, which is in Machpelah, which is before Mamre, the field and the cave which is in it, and all the tree, every tree which is in this field, which is all the in the border and all the border around, is to now Avraham. He purchased it, Avraham purchased it before the eyes of the sons of Chet, meaning before them, and all who came to the gate of the city. So once again, this passage emphatically says Avraham purchased everything. The cave, the field, the trees, everything in the border around it. It belonged to Avraham. It was a purchased property, and it was done before the eyes of the people, everyone who came to the gate of the city, meaning where judgment, decisions, transactions were recorded. Verse 19. And afterwards it says, Avraham buried Sarah, his wife, and he did so to the cave of the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre. It is Hebron in the land of Canaan. So how much clearer can it be that Avraham, he purchased this portion of land, which is known as Mamre, Hebron, and Kiryat Arba. It is uniquely related to Avraham, and here's the key, and the call which was upon his life. Verse 20. And the field, it was established, and the cave which is in it to Avraham. So it was established to him as a estate, a tomb estate, as a possession, as a parcel of land for burying, and he did so, notice what it says, from the sons of Chet. Now, why is that important? Well, it means that the sons of Chet, those people who dwelled there, they acknowledged this. Doesn't have to do with any other people, only Chet. Now, today, the Hittites, where are they? Well, we don't know. And the point is this: they no longer exist, but guess what? The Jewish people do. And there's no disagreement that this is Ma'arat HaMachpelah in Hebron, that it's a tomb, a burial place of the patriarchs. And if you are so misguided as so many individuals are in the world, and many Christians and church denominations, they say, well, that's Palestinian land. The Jewish people shouldn't be there. The Jewish people dwelling there, those 400 families, they're just causing problems. That is a lie from the pit of hell. That is satanic. It is the land that belongs to the descendants of Avraham, not those who worship the pagan god, the false deity called Allah, chas v'shalom. No, we need to affirm what the Bible does. And so many people just flippantly, and I've heard pastors so many times use the term Palestine, talk about, Hebron is Palestinian land. They are misguided. They are deceived. They are blinded by their failure to read this book in the simple truth. Hebron, it is the eternal possession of the sons of Avraham, the sons of Yitzchak, and ultimately, and this is important, the sons of Jacob. Why do I want to emphasize the sons of Jacob in this? Well, I do so because Avraham, well, remember, we've learned, also Ishmael was his son. But God, last week in Genesis 22, God did not acknowledge Ishmael. Remember what he said? It says, Yitzchak, my only son, your only son, speaking to Avraham. So it goes from Avraham and Yitzchak to Jacob and his sons, meaning the Jewish people. Hebron belongs to the Jewish people, not to Muslims, not to those who want to destroy Israel. Well, I'll end with that until next week when we enter into a very, very famous chapter, one that teaches us principles about marriage. And I'm speaking now about the book of Genesis and chapter 24. Until next week, shalom from Israel.
Well, we hope you will benefit from today's message and share it with others. Please plan to join us each week at this time and on this channel for our broadcast of LoveIsrael.org. Again, to find out more about us, please visit our website, LoveIsrael.org. There you will find articles and numerous other lectures by Baruch. These teachings are in video form. You may download them or watch them in streaming video. Until next week, may the Lord bless you in our Messiah Yeshua, that is Jesus, as you walk with Him. Shalom from Israel.